peer groups for a living. That's what I do the majority of my time. And I've seen the impact and power of peers in the lives of our group members. And so we're going to look at that today, because I think it's valuable for you as it was for the CEOs that I shared this with that are from your company during our October retreat. So I'm thinking back to, well, you should think back to your journey. What's the best team that you've ever been a member of, and what it made it so great?
I'll go. This is more, I guess, like a department team, but me and Claudia, we work hand in hand in accounting with, at BCT. And I think what makes it so great is our level of communication that we have with each other. We don't wait until there's meetings to communicate ideas or to, large tasks that we need to accomplish. We're constantly communicating throughout the day and, on different, whether it's a phone call or a quick Teams chat, but we're constantly communicating and making sure that we're both aware of what's going on and what we're working on, and not just waiting until meetings to make it happen.
Great. Anybody else?
I'm sorry. I was IMing the team to make sure that the other people remembered the meeting. So what was the question again? I kind of caught the tail end of it, but I didn't hear the whole question.
Oh, that's no problem. We were asking what you're buying me for Christmas, and Ashley had already said.
Well, it's a surprise. I don't like people to know.
Oh,
so
okay.
That's, it's a surprise. I like that surprise factor.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. The
Okay,
other question was this one on the screen. What's the best team you've ever been a member of, and what made it so great?
Ooh. Let me think on that for a minute.
Okay.
I think for me,
because Ashley kind of covered what's happened here at BCT. I'm gonna have to think on my prior work. I think mine goes back to when I worked at Mobil Oil. I was on one of the team that we were always reorganizing the IT side, and I was picked to represent the business IT side. Well, I say the business applications. So this was the first time that they brought people in from upstream and downstream. And then I was kind of the representative of the business side. And then the data center had a representative, and they stuck us in the dungeon in the data center. And I swear we worked with our backs, like, if you had to like look behind you before you stood up from your desk, because if you didn't, you'd like ram the person behind you. But we had a very cohesive team. We all had different personalities, and we all brought different thoughts to that organization process. Booz Allen was the contractor that was, kind of running the team in the process. But I really learned, at that point, I probably had worked for Mobil for about 15 years. And I learned so much about what I didn't know about IT. and I think that as a result of them bringing so many diverse people to that group, we came out with a better recommendation at the end of the process.
Cool. All right. Anyway, last one, and we'll move on. We don't need to spend more time bragging about how awesome BCT is. We know that already. Let's give it a rest. Anybody else? All right. We're going to talk about what that is as we go through this today. I love this phrase. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We've heard this a lot, but it's really the idea of peers. At some point in your life, you feel like I'd rather do it on my own. And then you learn the hard way that maybe it's not as productive, because there's a million things that you don't know until you realize you don't know it. And then when you're there alone, there's no one to help you with that. During our retreat that we had back in October, we looked at this content that Leo Botteri wrote, and he has a series of books that really focuses on the power of peers and peer learning. We're going to talk about a lot that he shares in his book. You know, our peers have had an influence on us since we were kids. Think back to the growing up at school or in your neighborhood or your sports teams. They've always been influencing us. How many of us were positively influenced by a peer growing up? Now, most of you have your camera off, and it must be because you're in your jammies, but I can't tell if you're going to raise your hand or not, so you'll just have to bark out. How many of you were positively influenced by a peer growing up?
I feel
Angie?
like I was, but I'm trying to think of a specific example.
Well, how many of you were
Same
led
here. I can
astray?
barely remember yesterday, Robert, so I can't. I can't remember when I was growing up, so
that's
give
fair.
my brain a minute to think
I
on
get
that
that.
one.
How about this one? How many of you were led astray by your peers growing up?
Yes, me for sure.
Yeah.
I had an older sister that was always led astray, so I was always the kid that wanted to be good. So I was always Miss Goody Goody Two Shoes.
Yeah, I was Miss Goody Two Shoes too growing up.
Yeah.
Well, we think back
I
to
was the
those
one
people in
leading
our
people
lives.
astray.
We think back to those people in our lives who really did have an influence on us, good or bad. I think back to the class clown situation in school. And the class clowns traditionally did their antics to win the favor of the kids around them, obviously not the teacher. And then when the class clown got too disruptive, the teacher steps in to try and control it. And the teacher would do it usually one of two ways. One is that they say something like, one more outburst out of you, young man, and you'll have to stay after school. And then, of course, I, being a class clown, would then think, well, now is this joke I'm about to lay out worth it? Staying after school? I got nothing going on today. I think I'll go for it. And you pay the price. But I had a couple of really savvy teachers who figured out a better way to do that. And they would say something like, one more outburst out of you and everyone is staying after school. And then my fellow classmates would stare at me with daggers in their eyes. Don't you dare. And it really kept me in check because of that. So peer influence has been a part of our lives for a long time. Our parents certainly understood it. They realized that no matter what a great relationship you have with your kid, at some point, the peers wield this amazing power. At some point, I went from being this amazing dad, really smart guy who could do anything, to a dad who knew nothing and all his friends knew everything. And it's weird how that switched. But then later on in life, I came back as a smart dad again. But our friends definitely influence us, and we see the effect of these relationships in our behavior. It's still the same in the workplace. It is. And we have people who can influence us in a positive or negative way if we let them in. Letting people in your life is tough for a lot of people. And it starts with the willingness to ask for help. One of the key principles of our CEO groups is that we admit we don't know it all, and that's okay. Nobody does, but many people aren't willing to admit that. And while this may seem basic, this causes a lot of stress for some people. And some people have a really hard time asking for help. Sometimes it's a matter of how we think about asking for help that makes a difference, or it makes it easier to ask. What do you notice about this statement? How might it be worded differently to make someone more comfortable?
I think sometimes just the word help, it makes you feel more vulnerable. I mean, you might say, I need assistance, or can you assist me with this? I don't know.
No, that's good. Well, how about if you were to say, I want your help?
Yeah.
It feels very different. You treat it as an invitation to someone you respect, because obviously you wouldn't ask a knucklehead. Someone you respect that you work with or know, you say, I want your help. It's very different than being needy or insecure, but it's saying that left to my own by myself, I'll only get this much done. But when I invite other people into my journey, I can do better. I can do it quicker, smarter, faster, easier. It feels different, doesn't it? You're asking for help specifically in a manner that really honors that person's unique ability to contribute. When someone asks me for help, I feel honored. My kids especially. But my clients who run very successful businesses, they're very smart, very successful people. But when they come to me and they want help, I don't want them to feel like they should be thinking less of themselves, but it's really inviting me in to bring my perspective into their story, makes me feel better, and it certainly helps them. But still, a lot of people struggle with the vulnerability to invite others in to help them. And I want to talk about that today. If you have a piece of paper and a pad and you're taking notes, I would encourage you to write down the term psychological safety. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. When someone asks for help, there's an awkwardness in that. And when they don't get the response they want, they shut down and they will probably not ask for help again. But as I mentioned earlier, when you're the person being asked for help, sometimes it feels frustrating based on the time and what you've got going on. But really, it's an honor that someone thinks you're smart enough, capable enough, experienced enough to bring something to their party. That is really a place of honor, and we need to look at it that way. And we need to create this mindset that together we're going to go further. Don't look at this as a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of resourcefulness. It's a sign of wisdom. I don't know jack about staffing in the technology community. So if I had a friend who needed that, it would be foolish for me to spend all my time talking about things to do. I just say, well, you should call Ashley, you should call Barbie, and invite them in, because it's being resourceful. It's tapping into people who know that. And in the process of doing that, you're creating this really unique connection and bond where one person helps another person and they feel closer. Does that make sense? Have you experienced that before, where you've reached out to someone and they helped you, and didn't you feel closer to that person afterwards?
Yeah, I think it helps build that connection. And I think, like you said, it helps them. It might make them feel, good that they trust you, to help them out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know, like you said, I always feel really honored when people are willing to ask me for help because I don't know, that makes me feel good that people are willing to ask me for help.
Absolutely. So let's take this whole mindset of helping people and let's bring it to our work mindset. We know the power of peers. We've seen it since we were kids, and we know that no one does it alone. And if you really want to make things easier and more enjoyable in life, it's better when you surround yourself with other people. And that's what we do in our monthly peer group meetings. But how do we bring this to the mindset to your office? All the people working in your company are peers. And if we can engage our teams to be radically transparent and open with one another, and to be vulnerable and be willing to help and ask for help, you can get the help you need to be your best, the best version of yourself. And plus, in doing that, we're building relationships, which makes the workplace more fun. There's a study out that shows where people get their information. And at the top of it is informally from my coworkers. That's the number one. They don't get it from what the business owner or CEO says to people. It usually comes from one another. Now that may not be the first place they hear about it, but it is the one that helps them figure out what it means. If we switch and we're going to a new service provider and the CEO says, we're going to do this, you hear that and they give you the details. It's a fact, we're doing it. Come January 1, here's our deal. There you go. But now, where do they go to find out what it means to them is to all the other employees. Oh, did you hear about the announcement? Yeah, what do you think that means? And we start talking it amongst ourselves. And that's because people feel that there's often an agenda from someone in management. Even though we know Barbie and love her and trust her, that we don't know the whole story. And still in the back of our mind from all the journey we've had, we somehow look at sometimes leaders with a little bit of distrust. But we think all our coworkers, they have no agenda. They would never skew any information. I can really trust what they say. So peers influence all the time. And I think the way we see this the clearest is when there's some kind of change that's trying to be initiated. And when we see that change and it's announced that there's a change in policies, procedures, or strategies, it trickles its way down from whoever the person making the announcement is And then they go back and they start talking about it at the lunchroom or even in chat rooms that you guys might have set up, or they call each other after work. And they're trying to help us figure out how we feel about this change. So we tend to focus on what's being said vertically from the leadership down to the team. But what's really validating what the truth of this is horizontally. Just another reminder that employees' voices are heard more strong and gives more credibility than the CEO. And for all kinds of reasons. I think a lot of that mistrust that I've seen is because the information isn't clear. Sometimes the business owner or CEO is not allowed to say certain things legally, private wise. It's too much information for where we're at today and we're not ready to discuss more. So they say what they can say, and not all leaders are great communicators. So the word gets out and you get some kind of vertical conversation, but then all the rest of it gets filled in. And where there's a lack of clarity of truth, we fill in our own version of truth. Sadly, the version of truth that we fill in is usually incorrect or horribly incorrect. So I see this as a great opportunity for us to build our teams. Every team has a lot of different employees with different titles, and not all of them are fancy like CEO, yet they wield an awful lot of influence on the other employees. Imagine if we were to identify the leaders on our team, the key influencers, and I think we know of those people in many cases, and we were to get their input before we launched a change, and then they became ambassadors to the organization. We explain to them and take a more time to explain what's going on in greater detail, because we know everyone's going to go ask them once it's talked about. We get them to be part of the change. Instead of just driving it vertically, we engage this other leader who will speak about it, and that people will find value in them because they trust them more. And inevitably, there will be a discussion about it, and you're preemptively building healthy communication by engaging that person who will communicate to the teams. So this is that mindset of understanding the power of what peers can do, means knowing that the horizontal strengthens what the vertical is saying. So the vertical is saying, we're going to make this change, and the horizontal tells me what I need to know to think about what I think about it. Are you following me so far?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
So if we direct and we develop peer influences in our teams, we can create what Leo calls in his book the concept of peer advantage. It's selective, strategic, and structured. We choose people to be a part of our team that we believe will help the team be our best. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we actually just choose someone because we need a warm body in that spot. And I've talked to clients all the time who would love to have a proper interviewing process to really vet out these people, but that person left all of a sudden. They got to have someone in there right now. And then they bring in a bad player and they spend all this time trying to clean up from all the mess that person causes. BCT knows that very well, because as a staffing company, you know what influence and what either positive value or destruction a good or bad player can bring. I think that's one of the beauties of what y'all. Hey, my Alexa is talking in the kitchen. Can you hear that? That's not like they're listening to everything we say or nothing. That'll make me sleep well tonight. Anyway, so we have this ability to strategically bring in great players and hopefully avoid bad players if we're going to create this peer advantage. It's this mindset that the right people with the right structure, and we're very strategic in what we do, can take us leaps above just a bunch of people individually working on things. The concept that in one of his books that Leo writes about is peer innovation. It's a combination of the word peer and innovation. And what it's doing is it's taking this peer advantage and it's really maximizing it. Take a look at the phrase that he uses to describe it. It occurs when a carefully selected, diverse collection of people with a common purpose and shared values work together to make each other better. And they create something larger than themselves. That's this mindset that, I mean, don't we want that? Isn't that what we all want to work at a place where it feels like that? It's not that hard. It just takes intentional actions of collecting the right people, of making sure there's enough variety, of making sure we understand where we're going and our purpose. That does take effort, but it's not as hard as you'd imagine. It does take intentionality. So with this optimization in mind, we're creating teams that will work together to achieve this collective goal. Sadly, too often they don't do that, but we can fix that. We just have to step back and take a look at it objectively. A Harvard Business School, there's a person named Amy Edmondson who stated the obvious during the COVID that we were all not in the same boat. We were in different boats fighting through the same storm. And I think the way I look at the things going on today is that we've survived it. And in fact, many of our businesses are doing quite well after COVID, but there's a huge amount of burnout. There's a lot of overload. There's a lot of isolation. What we used to have hanging around the office all the time has been deflated to some extent by working individually remotely. We've lost some of that camaraderie. There's benefits to it too, but there is also a lot of isolation that's causing that. And then when we become insulated, we're just head down on projects. We only think about what's in our world. We miss the ability to care for other people. There's a lot of obscurity that they can feel like no one really understands what they're doing and their accomplishments, and they kind of feel left alone and that they don't matter. There's challenges to our cultures. How do we keep people inspired and still create a sense of belonging? These are real challenges that we've got today. I know you guys are seeing this as you are working with different clients in the staffing side, but I think all of my clients in very diverse industries are all seeing these challenges. So I think it's time for us to regroup the team with a fresh mindset of creating this opportunity to find the power of peers who are aligned for a common goal and really working together. And we're going to talk about how we achieve that. And it does not require that we all go back to the office every day, because in some cases that's just not possible. But there is ways to create this. And I think one of the biggest reasons why we want to do this is that most of the change initiatives fail 65 to 92% of the time. That's a ridiculously huge number. The most significant impact on a major change outcome is the ownership and commitment to this change for all of the people involved. And that's hard to do when we're not aligned, when we don't have a shared communication and value. And the greatest driver for change is this ability for all of us to take ownership and to know that they're part of the solution. So we're trying not to seek compliance with initiatives, but we're really trying to seek engagement. Compliance is temporary. If I like it, I'll do it for a while. If I lose interest, I don't want to do it anymore. But engagement, where you know the reason behind it, and horizontally, we've encouraged one another as a team, and the influence of our peers is encouraging us to stay on track. It has longevity. It goes more than what I feel like doing today. We're going to talk about that. So Leo writes that we have this opportunity to create this framework that inspires peer-powered culture of agility. And he's got this learning and achieving cycle. We talked about it this morning in one of our group meetings. The basic process is we learn something, we share amongst our peers, we apply it to the business, and then we go about achieving it and getting it done. And once we've done that, we celebrate. And then we go back and learn something else and start over. That's the learning and achieving cycle. High-performing teams have a robust learning achieving cycle. The IT community talks about agile. It's this idea that we're going to figure out something, set it up, apply it, tweak it, go back and learn from it again, and keep doing that. When we have the opportunity to learn from each other, we bring together all those diverse perspectives and experiences. And again, saying that I want your help is inviting people to bring all their knowledge and insight and wisdom into that. And that learning process is maximized. If someone doesn't feel like they can be a part of the conversation, that their opinion doesn't matter, or that they can't contribute of any value, they shut down. And then in the learning cycle, we don't get the kind of input from them. In the sharing cycle, it stops there. And then it's harder to apply it because they haven't engaged. They might be compliant with some things, but they're really not engaged. This process deepens our understanding and gives us confidence to act as a team. And once we apply this and we learn how to do this, we just keep doing it over and over and over again. It's not that complicated. Learn something, share it with the team, apply it to our business, achieve the goals, celebrate it, go back and do it again. He gives an example about some research that was done where this people read 1,000-word article and they retained about 28% for the next 2 days. If they read a piece the second time, they increased the recall 46%. However, if they engaged with one another in context and they were sharing experiences and exchanging ideas and talking about it, the recall jumped to 69%. We go from 28 to 46 to 69. So there's something magical about talking with each other, having discussions, bringing it to life. Does this make sense? This isn't new to anyone, right?
Yep, makes sense.
This can apply to your business. This can be part of what you guys bring to your teams, especially when you're trying to afford some kind of change, that you're able to walk through this process of getting the whole team engaged and fueling the change you need. Leo talks about they have an advantage that is intentional and unintentional, or collateral learning, as he talks about it. Intentional comes from something we learn, we talk about, we apply it. But the collateral learning is the accidental learning, comes from how we learn together. The way that Ashley sees something and discerns it and processes it and thinks about it is different than how I would. So as I listen to her and as I watch her, I learn how to think differently, which sharpens me overall. And one of the things I love about our group meetings is there's always some conversation going on. And even if the topic is not something you're dealing with, the way that someone thinks about it and looks at it and discerns it, you look at it, you go, man, I would have never thought of that, because they think about it differently. They view it, they see it differently. Therefore, they respond and process it differently. And I can learn that even though that's not my topic, I'm learning how to think differently. And that is helping me become wiser and better at how I process things. So in this learning achieving cycle, that's the engine for building the kind of peer power that we want to see, engaging people, getting them to be open to help, receiving help, asking for help, learning and growing together. These are the things that fuel that learning and achieving process. We need to have these things dialed in to afford that process of learning and achieving. So we start by getting the right people. We already talked about that. We need to have that in that peer advantage is by bringing the right people together. And we need to create that psychological safety I mentioned before. We'll talk a little bit more about psychological safety. But the right people, I think I might have skipped this part. It's about diversity. It's about people with different journeys. A lot of my clients have had the word diversity kind of pushed around for so many years that they're jaded towards it or guarded to it. And it's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. But because of some of the processes they've gone through, they shut down quickly. So if you're that way and you've just kind of felt that this was a thing you had to do, let me encourage you that diversity at the heart of it is just bringing in a bigger picture. The world we work with, the clients we serve, they're different, all kinds of different. And if I only know the way I think, I'm going to miss not being able to take care of a lot of people. But if I can learn to think a variety of ways and communicate a variety of ways, I get to reach more of my clients, more of the people I want to serve, and I get to communicate and do better business with them. So it is to our benefit to have that well-rounded group of people. So when we have the right people, we create psychological safety, it leads to high productivity. And at that point, when we're really firing hard, we as a team are willing to be accountable to the results. We want accountability because we're rocking it. It's when we feel like it's not psychologically safe that we try and avoid accountability, because there's not a level of trust there. We'll talk about that in a minute. But having that productivity leads to this ability to have accountability where they're empowered to bring their A game every day. Great team members create an environment where people want to be accountable to one another. They care about one another. They look out for each other, and they're always working to do their best. And then that creates this amazing leadership. I think the best leaders are servant leaders who are there genuinely looking out to the team, The team comes first. Not that we don't ever take care of our needs, but by my taking care of my needs, I have better energy to take care of you. That's fine. But we steward the other 4 factors. We're looking, am I creating psychological safety? Have I hired the right people? Are we having productivity because we're having good communication and we're all aligned? And then have we built this air where people want to be accountable? I, as a leader, can create that. That's my role, is to create these other 4 factors that allow us to have this amazing fuel that creates this learning and achieving cycle. So when you think about your team, how is your team doing with these areas? These are areas that you would say, in some areas we've got the right people, some areas we don't. Maybe we have a lot of right people. Maybe we're not great at creating psychological safety. Maybe we are. These things are what you as a team member can influence. Even if you don't have the title of manager, it does not matter. Some of the best sports teams out there had a captain of the team that was in the background, not getting the limelight. With Michael Jordan team and the Bulls, it was Scottie Pippen. And Scottie was this captain of the team. And he was this amazing guy who just had a way of rallying everyone together. He was not the big name on the team. It was Michael Jordan. He was not the amazing coach. What's that guy's name? The big tall guy. Doesn't matter.
Larry Bird.
No, the coach of the Bulls is that guy who's a great coach, but that's okay. He doesn't know my name either, so we'll just call it even. Anyway, it wasn't that guy. It wasn't Michael Jordan. It wasn't the owner of the company. It was the captain. The captain was driving the change that the team saw. There's a really cool book. I think it's up there somewhere, called Captain Class. And it was written by the guy who was the editor for the Wall Street Journal sports section. And he collected all these stories and did research and found out why these famous teams, like the team that won the Olympic hockeys in the 80s from America, and these famous teams and these players that were so amazing, the thing that was the unifying force of success was not the star players, the coach, or the owner. It was the captain. So my point to you is, regardless of your title, you have the opportunity to influence your peers, and your leadership can be seen by the way you roll and by the way you're helping to create these 5 factors. Well, the 4 factors that you drive, which makes you a great leader. There's an influence, there's an effect on all of us to get the result we want. It's just not driven by the CEO. It's driven by the team and each individual member. All of us touch the results that we want to get. The results are in the middle. So we're all together. It doesn't help us to spend time blaming anyone. Oh, I work for a horrible boss. Fine, you work for a horrible boss. Now create an amazing team. I have clients who I do coaching and leadership development with senior leaders who are not the CEO or business owners, and they have challenges with some of their company leadership. And the reality is they're not going to make the final decision, but they have an amazing impact. We talked about that horizontal influence, right? So something's coming down here, but they're building this robust team. They're going to be the best team in the company. And even though the company has all kinds of problems, that's okay. I'm still going to be an amazing team where I have the chance to influence others instead of blaming and complaining, which is about my book, Nobody Cares. Don't forget. Let's get out there and let's figure out a way for us to influence our teams and make a difference. I like this statement because as we're working to build our team, there are some things we must absolutely hold on tightly to, like our core values and our vision, our mission, and our convictions as a human being. So Jefferson said, as a matter of style, swim with the current, but as a matter of principle, stand like a rock. And so being open to change is required to create an environment where your team will take risks and jump in and lead alongside you. But it does require that you be flexible, because most issues are not that big of a deal. There's only a very few issues that are absolutes. Dare I say maybe only 1 or 2. The other ones are preference. The other ones are that's all I know. And you need to be intentional to create a place where the team feels like it's okay to take a risk, to think independently and think differently, and then give them the support that allows them to contribute their part to the mission of the company. You can't tap into the intelligence of all your peers if you're closed and guarded, or they become closed and guarded. You need to have a culture where you're helping them open up and bring their A game to the team. Well, that's a mouthful. So that kind of inclusive leadership is being intentional to create that environment. So out of those 5 factors that fuel the learning and achieving cycle, the most important one, I think, is psychological safety. And that's the one that I think is also the most challenging. It's a little bit hard to get our head around it. It's this idea that everyone feels like it's safe to take a risk. And that's not easy to do because everybody looks at things differently. How Ashley views conversations, and she's bold and confident. And she just comes out and says, hey, here's an issue, let's work on it. Someone else might say, I don't know, I think we should have this. And they would approach it differently, their style, the words they choose, all those things. And don't forget the big bag of crap that we carry around because of the life we've lived that influences how we look at things, how we see things, how we interpret them, how we respond. We've got to work hard because of all the variables that go into every human that's a part of our team. So creating a psychological safety is hard, but it's so valuable. I feel comfortable bringing my A game. I do a myriad better in the job I do. But if I get shut down or I feel like it's not safe to be me, I pull back and I don't bring my A game. Psychological safety is advanced when everyone gives each other the benefit of the doubt. If you remember the presentation I did on how to build trust a while back, trust is defined as the benefit of the doubt. So in order to create a place where there's psychological safety at the very core, at the simplest, most requirement, is that we learn to give each other the benefit of the doubt. Does anyone disagree with this?
Nope.
Good job, Angie. These are some questions that you could ask your team or ask yourself and start to see how you would score. What kind of psychological safety is at your office? Do you feel it's safe to take a risk? Now, I probably should explain this idea of risk. Since it's not your company, you deciding, I thought I'd let somebody else have one of these offices that's empty and they could just come in here and hang out. That taking a risk is balanced with the idea of what is safe and wise and what the rules of our company are. Sometimes rules need to be broken, but a lot of times risk is just having a conversation about stepping outside of your comfort zone and listening, about taking the risk to try something you don't feel comfortable with. It's not about breaking the rules. It's really very small steps. We're not expecting you to jump off a cliff, but a very small step for someone can seem like a very big risk to others. Do you feel like it's okay to challenge the status quo to your manager? Are you able to go back and say things, hey, this doesn't make sense. Why are we doing this? Or we should change this. Angie, sir, has been empowered. I hope Angie will speak up and share any of these things that apply to her, but Angie's our office administrator. She's a rock star and she's taken on all these responsibilities. And we keep telling her, we want her to push back and tell us when she doesn't see something right. And a lot of times she does. And I'm often learning things that I would not see otherwise because she's willing to take a risk and say, that doesn't make sense. Do they feel like mistakes is a learning opportunity? Are questions always welcome on your team? These are not rocket science, but if you could just sit back and look at your team and say, how do we do in this area? And if you sent this out to all the team members and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate us? It'd be interesting to see where people may not feel that it is psychologically safe as you would wish them to feel. But then you know what you can go work on, whether it's one-on-one with them, helping them work through the things that they've got in the back of their mind, or the structure we've created. Or maybe you're unaware that in the past when we've talked at meetings and you shut someone down for sake of expediency, that they've taken that as that you don't care about their opinion or their insights, and you didn't mean anything by it. But if they don't tell you, you won't know. Having healthy conversations can get to the bottom of that. Here's just some ideas if you want to take a screenshot of this. Trust yourself. Any of these sound like something that you hadn't thought of before in the idea of creating psychological safety? Any of these that are new ideas to you? Any of these that you think would be a challenge for you?
not necessarily like a new idea, but maybe the know your audience is hard for me. I don't know. I've been with BCT for a year, and it just in that year I feel like I've grown a lot just trying to be more patient, and I think I've matured a lot as well, just personally and professionally, to know that not everyone thinks the way that you do, and I still struggle with that, and I'm trying, but not everyone thinks the same way that you do. Everyone, like you said, comes with their own like backstory and baggage, and they might think certain things. They think about things differently than you do. So I think be patient kind of goes alongside of that, at least for me, is to be patient, know that not everyone thinks the same way that you do or does the same things that you do. And to kind of just be conscious of that whenever you are making decisions, or even when you're typing up an email, be just know who you're speaking to. Yeah, I don't know. That's huge for me. That's something I still struggle with daily, and I try to be better at. So.
The reality is you're never going to say anything that will be interpreted by everyone evenly. And emails and text messages are the worst because, oh, what did you mean by that? So here's the message coming down this way, but then everyone's talking about it saying, well, that's what she meant. No, she meant this. No, she meant that. And you're never going to stop that. But if I know, hey, Ashley's great. She's my friend. If this sounds like you're being mean and ugly, I would just call you and go, are you okay? What's going on? And I would give you the benefit of the doubt that you didn't mean anything by it. Oh my gosh, no, I didn't mean it like that. Well, this is what you said. Oh no, let me clarify that. So taking the time to communicate well is a good start, but you're always going to have something that's going to come across sideways. But if I build an environment where everyone knows I'm not out to screw you, and I give you the benefit of the doubt, I go privately to you and say, Ashley, what does this mean? And then you clarify it. And then I stick up for you and tell everyone, no, that's not what she was saying. She said this. Or even before I've ever talked to you, when the conversation comes out and people are going around saying stuff, oh, that's so awful. I'd say, hey, she didn't mean it like that. Come on, we know Ashley. We could stick up for each other. We're creating this environment where we're giving people the benefit of the doubt. And what that does is other people look around at this and they go, well, okay, maybe I'm willing to take a risk and say something. Even if it goes sideways, I know that the team won't jump to conclusions and light me up. And I could have my team talking about me in a good way. So I'm willing to take a risk because I saw how it went for you. These are some good points that we all need to continue to work on to continue to build this psychological safety in our team so we can fuel the kind of activities we want to do where we're engaging the best of everybody. So when you see that there's some area that you need to improve on in creating psychological safety, or even going back to the 5 areas, is there somewhere where we have the wrong people on the team still? Have we not done the proper job in having the level of efficiencies in our process to increase productivity that leads to accountability? People want to bring their A game and own it, and developing leaders through that process. If we're still struggling with some of these key areas, let's go back and work on that. But in my experience, the easiest one for all of us peers to work on, since we don't always choose who works here and how the processes work, is we can create psychological safety. We could be the first one to say, hey, let's give that person the benefit of the doubt. That probably wasn't meant that way. We can be the one, when the conversation comes down, to be a champion for unity and for the team to work together. And when someone starts getting excited, you can calm them down and take them offline privately and say, hey, it's going to be okay. Let's not read into this. We, as peers, can help build this really cool environment, regardless of what the boss does, regardless of what senior leaders do. We have far more power, as we saw earlier, to influence the culture and behavior and attitude and safety of our environment that we work in. We have that kind of control. Ideas, thoughts? I mean, this is probably one of the best presentations I've given all day.
I think it's been great. I think it's just really encouraging to think about that we can have an impact even though we're not, like you said, senior leadership, we can still have an impact on our culture and just like encourage our teammates.
What's going to keep you from doing that? Not specifically asking you, I'm just saying as people are listening to this call, what's going to keep you from helping to build psychological safety at your office? That's a long pause. Nobody knows where the unmute button is at. Angie, am I still on?
You're still there.
Okay.
I was just trying to think of something.
Yeah, you're still here.
Okay. Well, I'm putting the screws to you guys because we're all comfortable with each other, and it's not an incrimination of your office, but for example, maybe you don't feel like you're empowered to do that. Go get empowered. Don't take any excuse for why you can't do something. If you don't feel like you're empowered, go ask Barbie, hey, am I allowed to speak up and encourage people? And when someone says something, am I allowed to challenge them? Uh-huh. She'll say, uh-huh. I think she'd use the word, uh-huh. If you feel like you have the opportunity to be a champion for change, step up, be the first one to go, okay. Or go back to the vertical and say, can you explain this to me so I can buy into it? And then go to the horizontal and be the one speaking and encouraging people.
I think, sorry, Robert, I think that Barbie, gives us that opportunity. I mean, at least every Monday, during our meetings, one of our things on the agenda is,
Keep it or kill it.
yeah, keep it. I was trying to think of the thing, and I even write.
That's why I hadn't spoken up, because I couldn't remember what it was until you started talking.
Well, that's sad for me because I send out the agenda every week. But anyways, the keep it, kill it, right? So she's like giving us the opportunity to speak up and be like, hey, do we need to implement this new process? Do we need to kill this new process? What can we do to be better? But I think just speaking for me personally is, I guess I am afraid to speak up sometimes, and not necessarily towards Barbie or anyone else. It's just probably a self-confidence thing that I'm still trying to work through, is to be confident, to be able to speak up and not be afraid of rejection or what others might think. That's kind of putting myself out there a little vulnerable right now, but that's the truth. And that's something that I can work on. That's something that I struggle with, and why I don't often speak up during the keep it or kill it segment of the agenda on Mondays. But Barbie does give us that chance to at least, speak up and have that moment with everyone. But for me personally, I struggle with doing that, just because, you're kind of putting yourself out there and, I don't know.
Well, so one of the ways to get over that is for you to ask a question instead of make a statement. Let's say you think, I don't really know that much about this stuff, but it's coming up and I don't want to say something because maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Ask it as a question instead of stating it as a fact. Say, hey, what other options have we considered? Or what else could we do? Or what would happen if we change this? Or I'm just asking because I don't know. And, ask it in such a way that makes you feel like you don't have to have said something that was ridiculous because you don't know what you're talking about. Just say, hey, I'm kind of the new guy, or I'm on the outside looking in. I don't know this role. Can you explain to me how this works? And let them say that in such a way that they will clarify it, or ask enough questions that lead to a topic or a mindset that we want to have. So that's a safe way to bring that up. The other thing you can do is, if someone takes something offline, let's say we have a keep it or kill it and no one says a word. And then after the meeting over, they come up to you and go, well, we shouldn't do this. Wait, why didn't you bring it up in the meeting? Don't get caught up in a bunch of banter about people who won't bring up things in meetings, but love to talk about it outside of the meeting. It's a huge time waste and it's not helping the team. Challenge them. Wait, stop. Don't give me any more information. Go back to the meeting the next time we're together and bring it up about keep it or kill it, or bring it up at our next team meeting to talk about it. Don't let all this gossip and dissension filter around the room. Challenge them to go back to the process and to bring it up. And if they're not willing to do it, then they're not helping. They're just being a dissenter. And those kind of people aren't going to last. And they'll be found out and they need to move off the team. But if they're worried, remind them that we have psychological safety, that you're invited to bring it up at a keep and kill. Help direct them back to the process. You can be just as much of an affirmation of the process as anybody else.
Thanks, Robert.
I hope you'll take some time and think about this. Focus on your role as a peer and how you can influence someone, and make a plan this week to reach out to someone who you think has great potential and encourage them and say, I see you as a leader. I want to encourage you to take some of these things you and I've talked about and bring it to the team. I want you to speak up. I want to encourage you, or rein someone in when they're talking smack about something. Hey, let's save that for the meeting. Hey, let's not jump to conclusions. Help be that person that helps build the psychological safety for the organization. You're just as powerful as any other person on the team. And you have to remember that there's someone out there who needs what you know. They want your help, even if they're not asking for it. And you being willing to step up and offer that can be a great blessing to the team and bring a better version of all of it as we work together. I'm going to wrap up our time together with a reminder that the holidays are just around the corner. I think the hottest selling item on the Amazon shopping list is the Nobody Cares book. People are buying them in droves. So you'll want to get that ordered early. If you decide to order in bulk, order from us because we make better profit. But buy one for all of the people in your family. Buy one for all your customers. It's a great book to encourage people. And a lot of what we talked about today, about us not making excuses or blaming, but actually bringing